12:04, August 11th, 2025. For hours, the South China Sea had been calm. Fishermen worked quietly in the distance and waves broke lazily over the shallow reef. But just north of Scarborough Shoal, the quiet suddenly shattered. The Philippine Coast Guard cutter BRP Suluan was making a run north, escorting two small civilian relief boats. On board, sacks of rice, drums of fuel, basic supplies for local fishermen who depend on these contested waters. It should have been routine. Escort them in, drop off the supplies, head back to Luzon. But nothing near Scarborough is ever routine anymore. Behind the Suluan, the white hull of a Chinese Coast Guard cutter, CCG-3104, was bearing down fast. Its water cannons roared to life, sending streams of high-pressure water whipping across the Philippine ship's bow. To an outsider, it might look like little more than a fire hose at sea, but up close, those water jets strike like sledgehammers. They can punch through glass, tear away railings, and sweep men overboard in seconds. For the Suluan's crew, each blast meant bracing against the deck, ducking behind armored shields, and holding on as their ship shook under the barrage. But water wasn't the only threat that day. From the haze off the port side, a far more menacing shape appeared, a 7,000-ton PLA Navy destroyer, hull number 164. This wasn't a white-hulled law enforcement cutter. This was a Type 052 D Luyong 3 guided missile destroyer, one of China's most advanced warships. It carried long-range radar, anti-air, and anti-ship missiles, and 100 vertical launch cells ready for combat. Its presence wasn't about fishermen or food aid. It was about power. Now, 3 vessels, 2 Chinese, 1 Philippine, were converging in a narrowing triangle of sea. Speeds were rising, tempers were fraying, and radio channels had gone silent. Out here, one wrong move could spark a diplomatic crisis, or worse. The Philippine cutter tried to hold course. Its orders were clear: escort the civilian boats safely. Don't provoke, don't escalate. But the Chinese Coast Guard had other plans. Instead of simply trailing behind, CCG-3104 swung wide, cutting across the Suluan's bow in a classic interception maneuver. It was the kind of move used to force another ship off course. A dangerous game at nearly 20 knots. What the Chinese skipper didn't account for was the destroyer. Hull 164 was still charging forward, oblivious to the cutter's sudden turn. In seconds, the Coast Guard ship wasn't just blocking the Philippine patrol boat, it was cutting directly into the path of its own Navy destroyer. The realization came too late. A thunderous boom split the air. Steel slammed into steel as the cutter's bow crumpled against the destroyer's port side. The shockwave rippled across the water, sending a deep, metallic groan echoing for miles. On the Chinese cutter, the damage was catastrophic. Its forward bow collapsed inward. Gun mounts twisted and bulkheads buckled. Crewmen who moments earlier had been standing on deck were hurled off their feet, some vanishing entirely from sight. Whether they were injured, trapped, or thrown overboard was impossible to tell. The destroyer fared better. Superficial scrapes, deep gouges in the paint, rattled fittings, but no real combat damage. Yet politically, the strike landed hard. In front of the very ship they were trying to intimidate, China's own Coast Guard had crippled itself. From the Philippine bridge, disbelief turned to shock. The Suluan's radio operator immediately opened channels. "Chinese vessel, we can provide medical assistance. We can assist in search and rescue." The message went out in English, then Mandarin. Silence. It was repeated twice more. Still nothing. On the Chinese side, the destroyer slowly pulled back, engines reversing, as damage control teams rushed along the port deck to inspect the scrape. The cutter sat dead in the water, bow submerged and helpless. But still, no call for aid. Accepting help from the very ship they'd been harassing would have been humiliating, and in front of foreign eyes, that humiliation mattered more than injured sailors. Meanwhile, the civilian relief boats drifted quietly clear, their crews shaken but safe. They had come here to deliver food and fuel. Instead, they had just witnessed a disaster unfold at the front line of a geopolitical struggle. By the time the Suluan returned to port, Manila had already made its position clear. In Beijing, the tone couldn't have been more different. Officials acknowledged a maritime encounter, but made no mention of a collision. Instead, they described it as routine monitoring and lawful enforcement within what they claim are Chinese waters. No photos of the crippled cutter ever appeared in state media. The accident was buried in silence. The strategic importance is enormous. The South China Sea carries over 60% of global maritime trade, worth $3.4 trillion annually. A conflict here wouldn't just be regional. Oil tankers, container ships, grain carriers, every corner of the global economy would feel the shock. And militarily, Scarborough could be a game changer. If China fortified it the way it has the Spratly Islands, it would extend its radar, missile, and air coverage right up to the Philippine coastline, just a short hop from Manila itself. That's why every Philippine patrol is a statement. We will not yield our waters. And every Chinese interception is a counterstatement. We're the ones in control. This collision exposed the razor-thin line between harassment and disaster. Gray zone tactics, water cannons, ramming, lasers, are designed to intimidate without firing a shot. But when you play that close, discipline slips. And when discipline slips, ships collide. On August 11th, the intimidation didn't just backfire, it turned inward. For Beijing, the incident will likely fade into silence. Never acknowledged publicly, for Manila it becomes part of a growing case file of reckless Chinese behavior. And that leaves us with one big question. Was this just an accident? An overconfident captain pushing too hard? Or was it a calculated intimidation run that went spectacularly wrong? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And if you want to help us bring more untold maritime stories to the surface, consider joining the fleet. Your support keeps us sailing into these deep dives. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe,